This is Daily Homeless News, where tell the stories no one else will. America in 2025, hundreds of thousands of people sleep on the sidewalks every night. Wherever you go, the image of Americans struggling to survive on the streets is becoming normalized. They exist everywhere, from urban centers to remote, impoverished areas. Living outdoors in vehicles or in places unsuitable and unsafe for humans, abandoned buildings, under bridges, even inside flood control tunnel. Today, let's peel back the layers of truth and uncover the seemingly illogical realities of a prosperous and modern nation like America. If you care about the real lives behind the headlines, those left behind in the economic race, and want to truly understand what's happening in a country often seen as perfect, please like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss any of our eye-opening explorations. The dark side of a place called the Land of Dreams. On a single night in January 2024, approximately 771,480 people were recorded as homeless in the United States, an 18.1% increase from 2023. This is the highest number since HUD began collecting data in 2007. But this number, as overwhelming as it sounds, likely only scratches the surface. Many experts believe the true scale of homelessness in America is far greater, hidden in the shadows where people sleep in cars, share overcrowded homes, or move from one temporary shelter to another. This hidden crisis demands our urgent attention and challenges the very idea of safety and stability in modern society. Life on the streets is a relentless battle, an existence defined by uncertainty and hardship. Every day, homeless individuals face brutal weather, biting cold winters that chill to the bone, and scorching summer heat that offers no respite. Without access to clean water, regular meals, or medical care, their bodies and minds suffer deeply. The constant threat of violence, theft, and discrimination strips away their sense of security, while social isolation deepens the wounds that society often overlooks. Beyond the physical hardships lies the crushing weight of loneliness and stigma, leaving many feeling invisible and forgotten, trapped in a cycle that seems impossible to break. The psychological toll is immense. Many homeless individuals wrestle with mental health challenges, which can both contribute to and result from their situation. Substance abuse often follows as a means of escape from unbearable realities, further complicating their path towards stability. The streets become both prison and battleground, where survival requires resilience beyond what most can imagine. Looking ahead, the outlook remains grim unless immediate and sustained actions are taken. Projections from housing experts and social service organizations suggest the homeless population could increase by 10 to 15% over the next 5 years if current trends continue unchecked. Soaring rents, stagnant wages, and a shortage of affordable housing are driving more people to the brink of homelessness. But it's not just large cities feeling the pressure anymore. Suburbs and rural communities are witnessing growing numbers of homeless in America. This silent spread sends a troubling signal. The crisis is deepening and expanding beyond traditional hotspots. The broadening reach of homelessness means the threat is no longer confined to marginalized groups or specific neighborhoods. It's inching closer to everyday Americans, workers holding multiple jobs, yet unable to cover rent, seniors on fixed incomes struggling with rising healthcare costs, the families living paycheck to paycheck with no safety net. The fragile barrier separating stability from crisis is thinner than many realize. How many more lives must be disrupted before this urgent issue demands our full attention? This rising tide of homelessness is a warning and a call to action. It forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the values we hold and the systems we support. How did we allow such vulnerability to become widespread in a nation with so much wealth? What will it take to reverse these trends before homelessness becomes an inescapable reality for millions? Understanding the harsh realities faced by the homeless sets the stage for deeper inquiry into the root causes of this crisis. What economic and social forces are driving this relentless growth? And why is it so difficult for so many to escape the cycle? These questions lead us directly to the complex web of causes behind homelessness in America and what must be done to address them. The causes behind homelessness in America are complex and intertwined, far beyond the simplistic myths that paint homeless individuals as lazy or solely victims of addiction. While substance abuse and mental health issues are factors for some, they represent only a fragment of a far larger and more complicated picture. At the core lies a convergence of economic, political, and social forces that create and perpetuate homelessness in ways that are difficult to unravel. One of the most significant drivers is the soaring cost of housing. Over the past decade, the price of rent and home ownership has surged far beyond the reach of many Americans. According to recent reports from the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, there is a nationwide shortage of over 7 million affordable rental homes for low-income families. This scarcity forces many into impossible choices, paying exorbitant rent at the expense of food and healthcare, doubling up with others, or facing eviction. When stable housing slips away, the risk of homelessness skyrockets. Economic pressures also play a critical role. Stagnant wages, rising living costs, and job insecurity make it increasingly difficult for many to maintain housing. The gig economy and underemployment mean that even those working multiple jobs often cannot meet their basic needs. Meanwhile, unemployment spikes during economic downturns push vulnerable populations over the edge, while a lack of social mobility traps others in persistent poverty. Mental health disorders and untreated medical conditions are deeply entangled with homelessness. The United States faces systemic challenges in providing adequate mental health care, especially for marginalized communities. Many individuals with mental illness lack access to consistent treatment, leading to deteriorating conditions that make maintaining employment and housing nearly impossible. Substance addiction, sometimes a coping mechanism, can become a barrier to securing stable living arrangements, creating a vicious cycle. Social safety nets intended to catch those falling on hard times are often fragmented and underfunded. Programs like public housing assistance, Medicaid, and food stamps help many, but bureaucratic hurdles, limited availability, and strict eligibility criteria leave large gaps. Political debates and shifting policy priorities have led to inconsistent support, making it harder for individuals to access the help they need to rebuild their lives. Homelessness is not merely an individual failing. It is the outcome of a web of systemic issues. Political decisions that prioritize market-driven housing policies, inadequate investment in social services, and policies criminalizing homelessness further entrench the problem. Laws that lead to the clearing of encampments without providing alternatives only push people deeper into instability. For some, homelessness may be a personal choice or circumstance related to family rejection or lifestyle, but for the vast majority, it is the result of forces beyond their control. The economic, political, and social upheavals that ripple through society both push people into homelessness and chain them to its harsh realities, making escape incredibly difficult. The barriers they face are not just physical but structural, rooted in the very systems meant to support and protect them. Understanding these layered causes is essential to crafting effective responses. How can policies evolve to address these intertwined challenges? What changes are necessary to break the cycle and restore stability to those caught in this struggle? The next question becomes, which groups are most vulnerable to falling into this precarious existence? Certain groups face a significantly higher risk of becoming homeless due to the unique challenges they encounter. Among the most vulnerable are older adults living on fixed incomes. Many seniors rely solely on Social Security or modest pensions that often fail to keep pace with rising housing costs, healthcare expenses, and everyday living necessities. As inflation continues to drive up the cost of rent and medical care, these fixed incomes stretch thinner and thinner, pushing many elderly individuals toward housing insecurity and ultimately homelessness. Low-income workers also remain disproportionately at risk. Even those earning near or slightly above the poverty line struggle to afford stable housing, especially in cities where rents have skyrocketed. It's not uncommon for these individuals to work multiple jobs just to cover basic expenses, yet still face eviction or overcrowded living conditions. The working poor, people holding 2 or more sources of income, embody this precarious balance. Their financial situation is often so fragile that a single unexpected expense or job loss can trigger a descent into homelessness. Moreover, the threat of homelessness is no longer confined to traditionally vulnerable populations or specific urban areas. Suburban and rural communities are witnessing a rise in homelessness, broadening the geographic footprint of this crisis. This expansion highlights that homelessness is increasingly impacting a wider cross-section of society, crossing socioeconomic and demographic boundaries. Families, middle-class workers, and even those who once believed they were secure are finding themselves on the brink. The reality is clear: homelessness in America is not an isolated problem affecting others. It is a pervasive issue with the potential to touch nearly every community and social class, raising urgent questions about how we as a society will respond to this growing threat. Is the social welfare network and the solutions the government has proposed enough to protect these vulnerable people? The issue of homelessness in America has pushed social welfare policies to the forefront of political and public debate. Recent legislation and government initiatives aim to tackle the crisis by expanding affordable housing, improving support services, and addressing the needs of vulnerable populations. Notable among these efforts is the expansion of the Housing First model, which prioritizes providing permanent housing without preconditions, paired with supportive services addressing mental health, addiction, and employment. Federal funding has seen a significant boost through programs like the American Rescue Plan and the homeless assistance grants administered by HUD, to channeling billions annually to states and local agencies. These funds are intended to increase shelter capacity, create affordable housing units, and provide wraparound services. The Biden administration's emphasis on coordinating efforts across federal, state, and local levels reflects a recognition that fragmented responses have long undermined progress. Despite these advances, glaring inefficiencies and controversies persist. One major challenge is the sheer scale and diversity of the homeless population. Homelessness is not a monolith. It includes families fleeing domestic violence, youth aging out of foster care, veterans grappling with trauma, and chronically homeless individuals suffering from mental illness or substance use disorders. Grouping all these individuals under a single policy umbrella often leads to inadequate or mismatched solutions. This one-size-fits-all approach has led to mounting criticism from advocates and practitioners alike, who argue that tailored, specialized interventions are necessary. Unfortunately, many current programs lack the flexibility and resources to differentiate between these subgroups, resulting in services that either underserve or fail altogether. The question then arises, how can policies evolve to accommodate the multifaceted realities of homelessness without becoming unwieldy or excessively bureaucratic? Political debates further complicate the landscape. Conservative critics often argue that increased welfare spending disincentivizes personal responsibility and fuels dependency. On the other hand, progressives push for expanded social safety nets and systemic reforms addressing root causes such as income inequality and housing market failures. These ideological battles sometimes stall meaningful legislation or result in compromise policies that fall short of solving the problem. At the local level, not in my backyard sentiments frequently block efforts to build shelters or affordable housing, exacerbating scarcity. Meanwhile, some municipalities resort to aggressive encampment sweeps, criminalizing homelessness rather than offering long-term solutions. These actions raise ethical and legal questions, revealing tensions between public order priorities and human rights considerations. Financially, the United States spends an estimated $15 billion annually on homelessness-related services, ranging from emergency shelters and healthcare to law enforcement responses. While this is a substantial investment, critics question the allocation efficiency. Large portions of the budget are funneled into short-term crisis management, rather than preventive measures or permanent housing development. This reactive spending, though necessary, often fails to stem the flow of new individuals into homelessness. Furthermore, accountability concerns arise regarding where the money truly ends up. Some funds get caught in administrative overhead or are absorbed by underperforming agencies. Others highlight disparities in resource distribution, with affluent urban centers receiving disproportionate shares compared to rural areas facing growing needs. Transparency and data-driven evaluation remain vital to ensuring dollars effectively reduce homelessness. Given these realities, it becomes clear that managing homelessness in America requires more than throwing money at the problem. It demands nuanced strategies tailored to distinct population segments, coupled with community engagement and political will. Successful interventions elsewhere often blend housing provision with healthcare, job training, and social services, recognizing that stable shelter alone isn't a cure-all. This leads us to reflect on whether the growing complexity of homelessness requires a fundamental reimagining of social support systems and a collective commitment to equity and dignity. If comprehensive reforms fail to materialize, the future of homelessness in America looks increasingly bleak. Rising housing costs, widening income inequality, and persistent gaps in social support threaten to push more people into instability and homelessness. Without decisive action, the crisis will likely deepen, spilling over into more communities, overwhelming public services, and fraying the social fabric that holds society together. However, there is still room for hope. Innovative housing models, expanded mental health services, and stronger economic safety nets have shown promise in pilot programs and local initiatives. A future where homelessness is reduced significantly depends on embracing these approaches at scale, backed by sustained political commitment and adequate funding. To avoid becoming a nation where homelessness is an accepted norm, America must prioritize affordable housing development, integrate healthcare with social services, and implement policies that address systemic economic inequities. Public awareness and engagement are equally crucial. Only through collective responsibility can real change occur. Are we willing to confront these challenges now, or will we wait until homelessness becomes an even more entrenched crisis? The choices we make today will define the America of tomorrow. The reality of homelessness in America reveals deep fractures within our society, economic inequality, inadequate social safety nets, and systemic neglect. It is a stark reminder that prosperity is not shared equally, and that millions live on the margins despite the country's wealth. Homelessness is more than the absence of shelter. It symbolizes a failure to protect human dignity and basic rights. This crisis challenges us all to rethink what justice and compassion mean in practice. It calls for more than policy fixes. It demands a collective awakening and sustained commitment. Every statistic represents a human story, a life disrupted and a community weakened. Now is the moment to wake up and pay attention. We can't turn away or pretend this isn't our problem. Each of us has the power to make a difference, whether by speaking out, volunteering, or simply sharing stories from a realistic perspective. So what will you do when faced with this reality? How will you help change the story for those living without a home? Share your thoughts, spread awareness, and be part of the solution. Because ending homelessness in America starts with all of us.